All right, everybody, welcome in. We are back from my baby break. My beautiful daughter. I'm a dad for the first time in my life. Probably, I guess not never the last, but been enjoying that. It's been an adjustment period, but unplanned. Me and Will are busting out the Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson jerseys tonight for the show or for the recording. This, of course, will be posted after the fact. So if any breaking news from training camp does transpire, if it's worthy, I'm sure we'll do an emergency show. I hopefully nothing breaking is going to happen that warrants that, but. We've got a pretty good show. Rookies reported to training camp Sunday. Kirk Cousins and his dad attire showed up today, along with the rest of the veterans. It's football time. I was telling you before the show, I'm doing fantasy football mock drafts. I'm starting to get back into listening to other Vikings podcasts, just so that way I can consume more and more football content as this season, kind of starts. This is the unofficial kickoff of the season, if you will, before it's Detroit and Kansas City on Thursday night this year, isn't it, for the first game of it? Yeah. So before the NFC North champion, Detroit Lions, if you believe the media hype, before they take on the Super Bowl champions, first you got to get through training camp and preseason, and we're going to talk about position battles, holdouts, extensions, the whole lot of stuff. So one, I'll punch it over to you. Just how have you been? It's been a minute since we've talked on air. And then also, what do you want to get into first?
July and training camp and everything. Had a couple little, brief family vacations with the kids, and we hit up the beach the other day and the splash pad and all those things that the kids love in the summer. So, it's been a good but very, very quick summer already. I think one of the things that you mentioned that I want to just briefly touch on to start is I think it's ironic and also fitting that you are wearing your Kirk Cousins jersey today, given that you are a new father, and Kirk Cousins is, acclaimed by many to be the father of the year based on his new hit TV series Quarterback on Netflix. It premiered or debuted, whatever. It came out on July 12th. For those of you out there who have not seen it, go watch it.
Yeah.
I've only watched 2 episodes and I'm already enthralled. It's very well done with Marcus Mariota, Patrick Mahomes, and Kirk Cousins being the 3 quarterbacks they focus on. They're going to do another season, I'm assuming, with new quarterbacks. And it's good stuff. And I think it shines well on Kirk, I think, as you were kind of talking about earlier, and jokingly called him your favorite quarterback's favorite quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Did you have any kind of off the top thoughts on the series and what you've taken from it so far?
So one, and this is something that every Vikings podcast is probably talking about. Just, not that Vikings podcasts are going like episode by episode doing a breakdown, but Cousins gets hit a lot, and now it feels like the NFL fans get that now. There are Bengals fans of mine or buddies of mine that are we didn't realize Cousins do you guys have an offensive line? And I have to say, yeah, we do. They're so sometimes. And Cousins, it really details how he played injured, or I guess, just banged up or whatever you want to phrase it. It really does a good job of that. And then overall, just to try and sell it for Netflix, if you're watching this and you want to give me a high paying job to do sales or something, it really does. The first episode, when you they do they're in the SUV with Marcus Mariota, and he's talking about Atlanta's the only place where I think I can get playing time, and I've done the backup thing, but I think I can go contribute somewhere. And it just does a good job of you see Patrick Mahomes, who is widely considered the best QB in the game, and you see him, and he's going to his alma mater, Texas A&M, and he's getting his number retired, and he's got this big house, and he's going to parties, and he's got Super Bowl rings and Super Bowl ring during the show, and then the contrast to Marcus Mariota dying to be able to play on Sundays is so, it's like whiplash almost, like the way that it cuts from one to the other. And then you have Cousins in the middle who's like, yeah, I know I'm playing on Sunday. I'm going to wear my shirt that looks like it's from the Old Navy clearance rack, and my wife picks out my clothes. And I actually watched the first 3 or 4 episodes with my mother-in-law, and she was like, his house looks like a house that I would buy. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't, he doesn't live in a fancy futuristic mansion with robot butlers, and it's just it's a house with a 2-car garage and, upstairs, middle stairs, and basement. He's just an average guy who's playing quarterback. So it's a really good show. Definitely go check it out if you haven't. It's worth, even if you have to get the Netflix with ads or whatever, it's worth just getting it, sitting through that, and then getting rid of Netflix if that's what you want to do. It's definitely worth it. But
it's 8 episodes. Really it's not a big time commitment at all. Something you mentioned on just the offensive line front that makes me think a little bit more about actual football and not just a TV show is this idea that the Vikings preached a lot during the first part of this offseason, which was off-season workouts, pre-draft, post-draft, mini camps, rookie mini camp, kind of all those OTAs, all the things that sort of happened in the April, May, and June timeframe. One thing that O'Connell and Kirk and all of the coaches, really anybody who ever said anything about the offensive line, was kind of putting this, preaching the value of the continuity with the offensive line. And I think there's something there. There's something with the A, it's the second year of the system. B, all 5 starters are back. I think they said something like 11 of the 12 or 12 of the 13 guys from last year's offensive line room are back. So they're talking about this idea of continuity that will sort of bring the team up a notch, or bring the group up a notch, or help them perform at a more sustained level. I don't know what you think about that from the standpoint of what we can expect from the offensive line, if that's a reasonable, supposition, or if it's kind of the team blowing smoke to try and, gas up their offensive line a little bit.
Well, I think that something that fans do, and I'm guilty of it as well, is we all assume that we live in a Madden franchise. Yeah. Where guys, unless they're at the back end of their career, guys are guaranteed to get better with age. And Darisaw is going to be even better than he was last year. And O'Neal is going to come back the exact same, if not better, than he was after the Achilles injury. Mm-hmm. And Ed Ingram, kind of struggled as a rookie and wasn't great, but he's going to be better just because it's another year in the system. And that's not necessarily how it works. Ed Ingram might be at his ceiling, and if he is, the Vikings have to be able to, live with that. And I think one thing that kind of has me optimistic about it is the Vikings offense wasn't really the problem last season. The offensive line, it didn't feel like we were losing games because of the offensive line. It felt like we were winning games because the offense, let's, call it what it is. We were lucky enough to have the ball in our offense's hands, in a lot of those games where we had a chance to go down and win, and we went down and we won. And so I do think Ed Ingram's going to take a step. I do think it's important to, have continuity across the offensive line. You always hear about teams that have 55 starters over the last 10 seasons or whatever it is. They have an outrageous number of guys in a certain span of time that there's just never an opportunity to know, what the guy next to you is going to do and to get that chemistry. And so, as long as we get all 5 guys back, which it's looking like we're going to, and as long as everybody can stay healthy, it's better than nothing. It really is. I mean, it's better than having a bunch of question marks like we do in the secondary, for example. I'd rather be returning the same guys there than have, than them have went out and got a guard in the 5th round, and that's our plan. Is okay, well, let's hope this guy can do it. And so I think that the offensive line is, Yeah, Cousins gets hit a lot, but part of that I think is the way that he plays. It's not that he's like a very mobile guy, but I do think, he does do a lot of bootlegs. He does make a lot of throws under pressure, and he's
Yep.
not Lamar Jackson, evading pressure. If somebody beats a tackle, he's going to get sacked. I mean, just 10 times out
Yep.
of 10. And so, I don't know. I'm not super concerned about the offensive line. I would say they're pretty low on
Yeah.
my concerns.
Yeah, it's similar to me. I'm not beating the drum for the offensive line. I'm not saying that they should be considered a top 10 unit or anything like that. But I think, like you said, among the list of concerns, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
Something that Garrett Bradbury mentioned when he re-signed this offseason, one of the things he was asked was, this idea of continuity, and he was very much high on like, this is great because in the way that we play as a unit. We have sort of a team protection philosophy. And so when you have all the same five, or in, like he was saying, 11 of 12, that idea of team protection is a lot easier to maintain from year one to year two than if you bring in a new guy, for example. So again, yeah, not a huge concern, but I think it's just something interesting to kind of pay attention to as this trudges along, because as you know, if the line is inconsistent and injured and a combination of those, it's going to be a long season, because no matter how good your quarterback is or how dynamic your running game can be, if the offensive line can't block, it doesn't matter. So it's something to monitor, but not the biggest of concerns. Speaking of concerns, how about Jordan Addison?
Oh yeah, that's so. Look, I don't like to be the worst case scenario guy, but it's bred into my bones and into my DNA that I'm a natural bound pessimist. And I mean, like, it was just like a year and a half, 2 years ago that Henry Ruggs, sped down the highway and he took a life, and he also took, I think there were dogs in the cow, so he took some dog lives too. And now he's in prison. Like, he's not, suspended on the commissioner's exempt list. He's in prison for making a really dumb decision. And maybe, it's my newfound, it's being a dad, so this is my, dad finger wave speech. But take football out of the equation. I don't want to see, how old is he? Is he 21 or 22? It doesn't really matter. He's still a kid. I'm barely not a kid at this point in my life. And you just hate to see guys that are so young making decisions like that. And it's like they don't grasp the possible repercussions of the action. And so, yeah, it's a dumb decision. He gets pulled over. He gets a ticket. He apologizes and says it was a dog emergency, and that's why he was speeding so much. A lot of people are going to say, no, it wasn't. You're making that up because you have a cool cow. You got some NFL money, and you want to fly. You want to fly down the road, and I get it. I've went fast in a car before. I understand. I've never went that fast. I can't say I've went that fast. But
I bet the car you own doesn't go that fast.
No, it doesn't. I drive a Toyota Prius, and it does. Me and my buddies found out it does go to 100, but it caps out pretty close to that, and that's about the fastest I've ever went in a car. Is about just at triple digits, and so for him to just go and do that, I hope that O'Connell and Kwesi make it very, very well known to him that they're not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. They understand that he's young and he wants to have a good time. Or even if it was a dog thing, you still have to, you're not above the law. You're not, doesn't matter what's going on with your dog. If you spin out of control and you hit somebody and God forbid, somebody passes away in the accident, you're going to go to prison. And it doesn't matter that you play in the NFL. A judge isn't going to look at that and say, well, I mean, come on. He's an NFL player. I mean, we can't just not put him. No, like, you're going to be held to the same standard that other people are. And so, I hope it's just a dumb mistake. I liked Ben Lebo's take on it. He made a dumb mistake. He's young. We've all wanted to go fast in a car before. And we've done it, and we lived through it. And some of us got tickets, and some of us didn't get didn't get caught. And hopefully, he's past that, and he can go on to have a worry Fui career with the Vikings, but we will see. But that's kind of
Yeah.
my 2 cents on it. I think he'll be all right. I think O'Connell, being a former player and just the vibe that he gives me with how he handles his guys, I think he's going to have a talk to him very man to man, not necessarily the dad waving his finger, that's always the thing that I get, especially after Zimmer was here. It always felt like, your dad sitting you down and yelling at you. I feel like it'll be more like a, look, brother, I get it. And I hope that, they get it figured out. And like I said, he can go on and do great things.
Do you think there's any sort of impact on his, prospects of being the number 2 receiver on this team from this? Obviously, that'd be a goal of his to be, number 2 behind Jefferson.
I don't get the vibe that O'Connell and Kwesi want to run the team in, oh, yo, rookie, you have to own, I think they want to put the best 11 out there on both sides of the ball. And it's not like I'm going to, it's not like he was Michael Vick and he got caught dogfighting. It's not like he did some atrocious crime that cannot be forgiven. He sped. He sped a lot, but he sped. And so I think that, if he proves that he can produce at a higher level than KJ Osborne, or a higher level than, I don't know, who's the wide receiver 3 right now? Jalen Luego?
Naylor, maybe?
Yeah. Like Jalen Luego, Jalen Naylor, maybe it's Tristan Jackson. I don't like whoever the wide receiver 3 is. I'm sure that he's already kind of penciled into that wide receiver 3 spot. I think he's going to get his snaps. I don't think that they're going to be like, well, we can't trust you to play on Sundays because you went fast. I don't think they're going to do that.
No, and I was even, I think that's part of the question too. But I was more even thinking from the perspective of like what it does to his psyche, if anything. And you would like to think that he'll just move on, and he'll just play again. Like we're saying, I think in some ways I'm probably blowing it up a little bit out of proportion. He got a egregious speeding ticket. Thankfully, everyone is fine. Nobody got hurt. And there's no sort of like long-term lasting impact from this incident. So in many cases, nothing really should bother him as he moves into the season. But I was even just thinking of it from like, how is he going to react mentally? I mean, I saw a picture of him walking into training camp on Sunday and he kind of looked sheepish and like, hey, don't look at me. Hi. And,
right.
You could tell he's got a little bit of like, tail between his legs. And in some ways that's probably fine. He was a hot shot, coming out of USC. He got a big bag of money from an NIL deal going to USC. He won the wide receiver of the year award. The name of the award is escaping me, for college in 2021. And he's had a very successful, albeit young, playing career in football. He was a first-round draft pick. He gets to go play with the flashiest and arguably the best receiver in the NFL. So he's got kind of all of this going for him. He's been praised for his route running ability and his the way he prepares and plays and how crisp he is and all these things. And then bang, this happens. And so in some ways, hopefully, you could see like maybe it brings him down a notch to the point where he has to build himself back up. And maybe we will be looking at, an even better version of Jordan Addison come week 1.
Yeah, and I think that I think that, like you said, we're talking about it. It needs to be talked about, and I like that he is kind of tucking his tail and he's not wanting to, face the media. And I think he knows he screwed up, and that's a good thing. If you screw up, you want the guy to know that he screwed up, so that way he doesn't screw up again. Yep. So I think he'll be all right. But that actually kind of leads well into a discussion about potential like camp casualties that we have, and you had kind of talked about like position battles that we're looking forward to, and the wide receiver position is one where I don't know if this is necessarily like camp casualty to me always has like a sadness to it. It's like a fan favorite that, oh, he just can't make the team. It always has that too. Why is Jalen Ruego still a Viking? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what he brings to the table that we don't have someone else on the team that can do it at the same or better level. He's kind of proven he's a bust wide receiver. And I feel like we could, I don't know his contract situation, but like we could probably save some money if we cut him, right? Like, I mean, you would think getting rid of him might save money. I don't know.
Yeah. You think I haven't looked at the details, but yeah.
But like Jalen Ruego, I think is a guy that I don't know that he makes it out of camp. I think that we're gonna have guys like Tristan Jackson, like Jalen Nailo, that are going to take his spot. And not to mention, we bought in the, and his name's going to escape me, but we bought in a wide receiver who kind of has, I think it's Brandon Powell, but don't hold me to that. We bought, maybe it's, is it him or is it Cephas Johnson? It's one of those two that they have punt returning experience. And so it's, I don't understand why Jalen Ruego's here.
Powell.
Yeah. Oh, wait, is it Powell? Okay. So
it's Powell. Yep. He was the Rams punt returner who took one to the house against the Vikings on the day after Christmas 2 years ago.
Okay. And then there's a rookie too who I can't remember which rookie it is, but go back and watch previous shows. I've done this exact take on those shows. Well, I don't understand why he's still going to be on the team. So I think he's a guy who I don't foresee him making it out of training camp, still a Viking, and I wish him nothing but the best in his future endeavors, but they should not be with the Vikings in the purple and gold. And I think that wide receiver position is just, it's exciting to watch. Jalen Nailo kind of had he was like the garbage time superstar last year. We were getting blown out against Dallas and it felt like he came in, I feel like he had playing time against Chicago.
The Green Bay game, he had a good game in that blowout loss. Yes. And then I think even against Chicago, he got some good run. Him and KJ Osborne were kind of the only two guys out there still.
It feels like he's kind of a guy that, he sees that we bought Addison in, and yeah, he's a first-round pick, but I've been in the system for a season. I've gotten playing time with, I've caught passes from Kirk Cousins. I've been on this team. I know this coaching staff. I have a rapport with my teammates. Like, I'm not just going to give away wide receiver 3 reps. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to bust my tail and I'm going to make Jordan Addison own it. So he's a guy who I think it's going to be exciting to see Jordan Addison have to claw his way up the depth chart. And I think he will. I think, like I said, I think he's already, you take a guy that, I don't want to say that high, but you take a guy in the first round, except for Lewis Cine, I guess, you expect him to play. And for me, I just think that Nailo is a hurdle in Addison's journey, but that doesn't mean that Nailo's not going to get any playing time. I mean, even Jalen Ruego got a couple of snaps last season, so it's going to be exciting to see what some of these rookies can do, who emerges as the punt return specialist. That's always a conversation for the Vikings since Marcus Sherrill's left is, who's the guy that's taking punts back. And so we're going to see if it's one of the rookies, if it's Brandon Powell, or does Jalen Ruego not drop a single punt all training camp. And they say we have to keep him. He's our punt return guy. He's got speed and he's got good hands on punts. So I think that those are two that I'm really looking at that are exciting to me. What are you looking at? Who's like a camp casualty that you're either excited to see go or maybe afraid to see go?
Generally speaking, there really aren't any that I would be excited to see go. I think the defense as a whole is kind of just suspect at this point, just because we don't know. I think we frankly could have a middle of the pack defense that competes and hangs in there enough, given Brian Flores' addition and depending on what some of these young guys can do. But I think there's just so many question marks on defense that it could lead to some weird casualties. You could have something where, Dean Lowry doesn't make the cut, or if things go really, really wrong, Jordan Hicks doesn't make the cut. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. I think Jordan Hicks is the leader and the veteran in that linebacking crew, so I think he'll be around. But you never know with some of these things where we have so much unproven talent that could flash and could really solidify themselves. And you're talking about, the way that O'Connell and Kwesi like to run the ship here, and they put the best guys out there. They give the guys who have proven themselves a chance, and it was clear that Kwesi was not going to just keep guys for the sake of nostalgia or veteranness. He cut 4 fan favorites, in the span of a few months, and so he's not afraid to cut people who don't make the cut, and so it's something interesting to watch. I think one that it's maybe a little bit of a sneaky pick for me is Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
And it totally depends on how the Vikings want to play the whole quarterback situation, because Kirk really likes Mullins, for one thing. He was very excited when Mullins came back. He even made mention of it in his press conference when he was talking about locker room continuity from year 1 or 2 with O'Connell. He was excited that Nick Mullins was back. Because I think that is something that we overlook a little bit, who the starting quarterback relies on in his quarterback room. And I think having a somewhat veteran guy from the league and has seen a bunch of stuff and has seen all the systems and knows how to run an offense, I think that's valuable to Kirk Cousins. On the other hand, though, Jaren Hall, excuse me. So many Jalens. Jaren Hall is potentially, with many asterisks, the future. And he's a 5th-round pick. He's 25. He's very much not the prototypical future franchise quarterback. But this regime drafted him. This regime thought it was important to draft him and use one of their 5 draft picks on him. And in a league where only 2 quarterbacks typically make the active roster, and you don't want to lose Hall to a practice squad sort of poaching from a different team, you might want to let Mullins go.
Yep.
And not risk that. So it's something interesting. They could keep 3 quarterbacks. That's not out of the question. But Mullins is one that I see a potential for. Another one just to think about, Greg Joseph. I think he'll be around, but they brought in another kicker, a relatively successful one from Georgia, Jack Podlesny. So if anything, that's just fire under Joseph, and maybe that's all it is. But it's interesting to pay attention to. We can see how long Podlesny lasts and compared to last year when Gabe Burkich made it about 3 days, and then
yeah, I think
I believe, but
I think another guy that I there's no shot that he is in danger of being cut, in my opinion. There's no shot. But the Vikings did bring in a long snapper today, and probably just a guy to snap the ball for drills and stuff. Right? Not gonna take Pro Bowler Andrew DePaula's job. But there is some long snapping competition. So is that the electric camp battle that nobody's talking about? The Pro Bowl long snapper Andrew DePaula going up against a guy whose name I can't remember, who does have long snapping experience in the NFL. Like I said, I don't think so. Nope. No. I think he is pretty cemented in to make the team, but they did bring him in, and I that's kind of my fun way of being like, hey, the Vikings made 2 additions today. They are not, they didn't go out and make a trade or make a big signing, but they brought in some camp guys who are going to, snap for that, for the other kicker or snap for the punters and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of fun. I think that there is a couple more things that we should dive into here, one of which being Danielle Hunter. Is he going to play for the Vikings this season? What do you think? What's your gut feeling right now?
So I wrote a piece on him the other day, and I don't know if I necessarily, I guess I don't think I have a very specific, this is my opinion and I'm sticking to it. But I think if I had to plant my flag somewhere, I would say he will not. I think we're at a position with Hunter, and who knows, maybe by tomorrow at this time, he'll be back at camp, he'll have a contract, and all this will be forgotten. But I think the concerns that I have, and that it's pretty clear just reading the tea leaves that the Vikings have, are his age he's not old yet, but he is 28, almost 29. He has played in the league for 8 years, so he's got some wear and tear in his body. He missed a year and a half because of injury, so he hardly played between 2020 and 2021. And generally speaking, thinking about how NFL careers go, they don't go upwards once you hit age 30. And, he will be 9 this year, but the thing is, he's not gonna play on a 1-year deal. The only scenario where I see him playing on a 1-year deal is if they just absolutely load him up and they pay him like $25 million of like 1 year guaranteed money and then like a team option for next year or something.
Yeah.
That's really the only scenario that I could see him playing on a 1-year deal. I think he wants a longer term deal. I don't think he wants, justifiably so. He doesn't want $5 million or whatever, $5.5 million this year. That's very puny for what he is worth. But with where the Vikings sit, it's, the injury history, it's the ascending age, and the likely declining value that comes from that. And I don't think they're going to be willing for a team that is very focused on value to hand out a big contract to a guy that is reaching the 3-year threshold. And one last thing I'll just note as I was looking into this a little bit more, there are, of the 10 highest annual salaries for edge rushers, so any number of years for the contracts, but for the annual salary value, 8 of them were signed at age 27 or younger. And so if you just think about it from that perspective, the Vikings are probably not going to give a big chunk of change to a 29-year-old. It's pretty unlikely. And so there's just a lot of sort of factors in this that are sort of against the idea of Hunter being back. Like I said, the caveat being if they're willing to just kind of shell out money for 1 year for him, basically give him the rest of the cap space and give him a bunch of guaranteed money for 1 year and then let him be a free agent or something. But I think, if anything, I could see Kwesi trying to trade him and get, pick swaps like he did with Hunter or with Zadarius Smith. Excuse me. What do you think? Do you have any differing thoughts on that?
I don't know that I have that many different thoughts. I do think that he ends up traded, but I feel like we've approached this from very much like there's gonna be a neat bow put on this by the time the season starts, and there might not be. This might just be a Le'Veon Bell hold out through the season, and next year, the Vikings get rid of him for whatever, and this might not be such a, it might not be as easy as, okay, we're going to trade him for this many picks or for this pick or for a swap or whatever it is. And it might not be the Vikings give him a 1-year deal, let him play this season and then cut ties next season. It might turn into a lot sloppier of a situation than that. This might be Danielle Hunter is reporting for duty come week 5 or whatever, and he shows up to play on his contract, and he plays on his contract, and then next season he's gone. And I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm hoping that Kwesi. I remember this was years and years ago. It makes me feel ancient, but it was whenever Xavier Rhodes was kind of waiting on his contract, and everybody was like, "Are we gonna pay him? Like, what's the plan here?" And training camp started, and once training camp started, very shortly thereafter, a deal was reached between Xavier Rhodes and the Vikings. Now, granted, I don't remember Xavier Rhodes holding out for a contract. It wasn't, messy like it is with Hunter, but the Vikings extended him, and everything that happened. And so, honestly, at this point, I'm more concerned about getting Justin Jefferson to sign his name to be a Viking for the rest of his life than I am Danielle Hunter, who has been a middle-of-the-pack edge rusher, for the last, when he's healthy, the last, 3 or 4 years. I think that he is not just a guaranteed, 15, 16 sack guy. I do think he benefited a lot from playing next to Everson Griffin. And that's not a knock on him. He's still a very good pass rusher. I still think the Vikings could and should get, fairly decent trade compensation for him if they do go that route. But I I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But like I said, I'm much
Yeah.
more worried about getting Darrisaw, Hawkinson, Jefferson signed than I am Daniil Hunter, who's about to turn 29. Is starting to get up there, and it's crazy that we're talking about Daniil Hunter about to get up there in age. Whenever it feels like just yesterday we were talking about, oh my God, look at how young he was. Like, he is, and he's doing all, he's getting 15 sacks, and he's only 22 years old or whatever. And so it's crazy how much, time has flown by for Daniil Hunter's career. But, such is life in the NFL. I have a take that I want to very quickly just get out of my system. It is, I'm excited about it. I feel like it's a decent take. It is not as good as, the infamous get it tattooed on my forehead, the Vikings will win as many games as Kirk Cousins has interceptions take. That was creepy, and it held true for most of the season last year. It didn't end up being true for the entire year.
I think it was one off. I think he had 14 and we had 13 wins. I think it was like one off or something.
So my take is the Vikings will finish with they're going to have less wins this season. Spoiler, they're not going to win 14 games. I don't think they're going to win 13. They are going to have less wins this season. They are going to have significantly better point differential. I don't think they're going to get the flow mopped with them like 3 times like they did last season. But I don't think they're going to get the lucky bounces in every one possession game like they did last season. So I think this is going to end up being like a 10-win team, but they're going to have like a plus 30 point differential, and everyone's going to be like, well, are they better or are they worse than they were last year? Because they don't have as many wins, so that's bad. But, who was that Packers fan that, like, everybody was roasting on Twitter because he was like, well, if you look at their advanced metrics, they're not that good of a team. And I guess he was right because we lost to the Giants, but, like, whatever, at least we made the dance, Luzo. So that's kind of my take, is that the Vikings are not going to win as many games, but they are going to have a much better point differential because if I remember, we finished with a negative point differential last year. So that's exciting. So that's my take. I don't know if you would consider that spicy. We'll call it mild. It's a mild take for, just kind of kicking off training camp, getting back in the swing of things. All right, we'll start and slow. Mm-hmm. I'll be ready to declare Super Bowl champions in like 2 weeks. Don't you worry. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I'm trying to think of what else we have on the dock for this show. What else do you have?
Just the last maybe couple things. I'll just quick touch on the Hawkinson Jefferson extension topic. There really isn't much to dig into right now. We could speculate, we could give our opinions, we could, talk about whether or not we should sign them now or wait or for how much money or all that. But that remains to be seen. Frankly, there's not been really any news on the TJ Hawkinson extension. I don't even think it's been talked about. It's a little bit strange to me, frankly. I know the Jefferson one is obviously bigger news, but the addition of Hawkinson to this offense last year was massive. He was the straw that stirred the drink in the playoff game. He was electric in his first game on the team. I think he has the NFL record for most receptions on the first 10 games of your career with a new team or something, like something wild like that. I could be wrong on the specific stat, but he was a very valuable addition to the team. And so, you'd like to see an extension for him. Jefferson, obviously you want to see an extension soon. Really no news has surfaced with either of them. It does not look like there's going to be any holdup from Jefferson. He said as much during minicamp. So there's really nothing spicy going on there other than just, they got to do the business and they got to do it behind the scenes. And once we know, we know. I think we're both in agreement that signing those guys to longish terms deals is in the best interest of the organization. And that's another part of the reason why, you mentioned like the Hunter thing with that is if Hawkinson and Jefferson are signed for, pretty good money, there's less room on the salary cap for someone like Daniil Hunter who's asking for a big chunk of change too. Right. So I agree with you. I'd rather pay a couple guys that have proven to be upper echelon of their position and are young and healthy and ascending and look to be fixtures of a winning culture.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, really quick, I wonder if part of the extension talks and why they're kind of moving slow is because the Vikings and I was kind of thinking about this earlier. This is kind of nightmarish to think about, but like the Vikings might not have a plan after this year for the quarterback position. Like we like to think
Yeah.
that they do. We like to
Yep.
think that they have, everything under control, but they might just, Kwesi might be thinking to himself, look, we got Cousins for this 2023 season, and if he plays really well, we'll extend him and we'll make him a Viking until he retires. And if he doesn't play really well, or if he plays, less than what he did last year, we'll let him walk and we'll extend some guys and we'll bring in a rookie and we'll have a really good team around the rookie, and hopefully we end up getting our Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, whatever you want to call it, Jalen Hurts, whoever it is. And so I'm wondering if that's kind of maybe throwing a wrench in things for like extensions. I know you kind of talked about the whole maybe Jefferson doesn't want to put his name on anything whenever he doesn't know who the quarterback is. And maybe there is kind of a, let's just wait. Let's see how much money we actually have, because it's kind of hard to sign TJ Hawkinson to a 7-year deal. Not a 7-year deal. He's like 26. But it's hard to sign him to like a 3 or 4 year deal when we don't know how much we're paying a quarterback in 2 years, because we don't know who's going to be playing quarterback for the Vikings this time next year. So I wonder if that factors into it at all.
That's an even more interesting side of the argument that I had brought up last time, because what you're saying leads me to think that, even from the team's perspective, you could see a situation where, let's just hypothetical this, if the season is going poorly, they start 2-5, injuries, Cousins is not great, or even if Cousins is fine, but like the defense is all hurt, and who knows, Madison goes down in week 4, and it's just a pile of injuries, and they're 2-5, and it's a disaster. You could see them just trading the farm and rebuilding. It's a weird thing to think about, but imagine what you could get in a trade with Justin Jefferson. I mean, we hypotheticaled that last time. Like you could move up to the number 1 overall pick next year. You could, you could even trade TJ Hawkinson for probably more than they paid for him last year. I do think that you would like that his stock has probably risen since playing for the Vikings. Heck, you could trade Kirk Cousins at the trade deadline. There's a million different things that, could come. And not that the team is sitting around here waiting like, okay, if things go badly, let's make some deals. But that has to be in the back of their mind of, being solution oriented, as I was talking about. That let's lock ourselves into a corner here. Let's play our cards when we need to play them and hold them when we don't need to.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a situation where they don't need to. They're not going to hold themselves hostage to a couple really talented offensive players who, and I don't mean hold hostage in the sense of, Hawkinson and Jefferson are, holding the organization hostage and that they're being vicious about this. It's just that if you pay these guys large sums of money, in a way you've sort of, married yourselves to them, and then your team goes as they go, and you're kind of strapped.
Yeah.
If things go poorly this year and you trade everybody, you rebuild with maybe Jaron Hall, maybe somebody in the draft next year, and maybe you have a somewhat more of a official rebuild that you sort of undertake, because what you don't want is you don't want a situation where you're a bad team with a superstar receiver. It does you no good. You might as well trade Justin Jefferson to the AFC and let him go wreak havoc on all those teams, and you sort of start over and lick your wounds a little bit. So that is an interesting thing to think about. I think that idea is probably going on behind closed doors.
For sure. I think that it has to be. And I think that what we know of Kwesi and how he looks at things, he does look at it, almost like the stock market. And so I think he does have to have the, break in case of emergency button. Well, like you said, if this season is looking irreparable, pulling the I don't think that they're trading Jefferson. I don't think that that's in the cards. And it's just because I think that you can build a bad team. Oh, you can build a bad team with a really good wide receiver, but I think you can build the team back to being good while paying Jefferson. Yeah. But Hawkinson, I just bought a Hawkinson jersey today, and it would break my heart. But if the team's not doing good and we can get maybe a first round pick for Hawkinson, yeah, let's explore it. Let's
Yeah.
explore,
Yep.
some of these trades. Let's look at getting rid of some of the veterans. Harry, unfortunately, we're all happy that he signed and he's going to be a Viking till he retires, and maybe that's not the case. Maybe, a team needs him. Or maybe, who knows, man? Maybe the plan is still to trade Kirk Cousins to San Francisco for Trey Lance. Nobody knows what the plan is because we're not in those meetings and we're not in those rooms. But that's all some pretty high level speculation. I do think that
Yeah.
there's a break. I think that they have an what button in case things go that direction. I think more realistically, what you'll see is the Vikings maybe being buyers again at the trade deadline if they're sitting around 500 or maybe a game or two above at the deadline, and they say we're going to go out and we're going to add even more, whether it be a defensive piece or I don't think it would be an offensive weapon, so I don't know what it would be. It would have to be on defense because the offense on paper, my God, it seems stacked. But we've went well over time here, and I'm trying to think of other things that we need to cover. But let me get my final thoughts out, and then if you have anything else, I'll let you get them out with your final thoughts. But of course, make sure that you shop unified. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter at LTB Vikings, and follow Will over at Will Bad Lose. Did I get that right? Yes. Okay. I always forget if there's an underscore, and we
It's been
haven't
a
done this.
while.
We haven't done this in so long, and I wake up every day at like 3:00 to change a diaper, and it's just the best. It's just the best
Living
in the
the
world.
dream.
But living the dream. Living the dream. But follow him at Will Bad Lose. Check out the Bad Loser blog. And of course, make sure you're checking out VikingsTerritory.com and PurplePTSD.com for just all around great, Vikings news, takes, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be playing preseason games before we know it. And with mini camp or training camp and everything starting up, it's getting time. I mean, it really is. Start listening to Matthew Barry. Start listening to fantasy football podcasts. Start listening to us because, it's time to start getting back in the swing of things. I know it's hot. I know everybody wants to go golfing and jump in the pool and watch the Reds on a 5-game winning streak. I've been checking the game, throughout the course of the show just to make sure they're doing fine.
There are so many Reds fans who listen to our show, I'm sure.
I know that there's at least one, and it is my mother. But, no, but, legitimate. I know we all want to watch the Twins or watch baseball, and we'll, our minds are elsewhere, but it just, in the back of our minds, football is coming. It's less than 50 days away. This is when it gets fun. And so, we'll see what happens. Excited to be back in the swing of things. Excited to talk about, my favorite game, and excited to talk with, one of the best football minds on the planet, Will Goodwin. And Will, I'll pass it off to you to get us out of here. I don't know when we'll be back. I would assume next week, but next week. We'll discuss.
I think that's the plan. Depends on, children, but
yeah,
that's the plan.
I think we are back to being a football show, a regular football show. The off season is over. I'm going to be doing 2-a-days. I got to try and lose some weight so I can fit in all my football jerseys because I've fattened up over the summer. So yeah, let's get after it. Will, I'll let you take us home.
Yeah, final thought for me. I mean, this time of year is, maybe, if you're just sort of an average football fan, you don't think about the, training camp. It's, whatever, who cares? They're just running through drills and practicing on the fields. But it is a wildly exciting time to be a football fan, whether you're a Vikings fan or otherwise. You think about the notion of 90-man rosters getting cut down to 53. That in and of itself is wildly fascinating. 37 guys who are professional football players have to be let go or moved to the practice squad. And, guys whose dreams are made on draft day or are made, being an undrafted free agent or something, they get crushed just months later. It's exhilarating. It's saddening. It's exciting. It's all kind of all at once. I would also just say, get out to training camp. I was able to go last year when I actually went to both the 49ers joint practices. The joint practices are a lot of fun. I would also just say go to a normal training camp day. It's fun. The atmosphere is cool. The facilities are amazing. In some ways more impressive than US Bank Stadium, dare I say. And it's a really cool environment to be with a bunch of Vikings fans, and just kind of you get to peel behind the curtain a little bit, just because you get to watch these guys practice and you get to see what they do sort of on a day-to-day basis. And it is an experience from last season that I, hold very closely, and that it was definitely worth the time to get out there and worth the sweat and, sitting on the bleachers and everything. It's a really cool environment. You get to see these guys up close and get to kind of soak it all in. So that's my pitch. Get out to the TCL Performance Center and watch those guys do their work. So that's all we got. We will be back, like Jordan said, next week. We'll talk a little bit more about training camp. We'll talk a bit more about position battles. We'll dig into a lot on the defense. There's a lot to talk about there. So it's just getting fun. Everybody's going to be reporting on Tuesday. The whole gang's back together. Like Jordan said, less than 50 days to opening day. It's pretty crazy. We'll see you next week. Skol, y'all.